Hello, welcome to RC Video Reviews. Today we're taking a look at the brand new 80mm integral from FMS. Before I get into the content, I need to let you know this video is sponsored by FMS, who sent me this 80mm integral for review. I'll have links in the description if you'd like to pick one up for yourself. Also understand this is a new product release, so I expect demand for this product to be quite high. Very likely, if you don't get after it pretty quick, you may end up going through a first round of waiting for it to come back in stock. As this is a new release, FMS asked us to convey a couple of talking points, which I'm going to go ahead and share. The biggest one is that this is a licensed product by Tomahawk Aviation. So if you're not familiar with those guys, they're the ones that also license the Futura to FMS for production as well. They've definitely done some unique things with styling on this one, and the first thing that jumps off the page to me is that canopy. That's kind of unique sitting up there. But when I pay attention to the rest of the design, what I see are a lot of curves. So it looks like they made an honest effort at having a very low drag machine. And in the talking points, one of the comments that FMS made is that this plane is intended to be very stable at low flight speeds, which means landing should be a little bit easier. And it probably will be easier for a beginner to handle versus some of the other jets out there that have a very high wing loading. We will certainly check that out when we do the flight, but clearly unique styling on this one. And it's obvious looking at the design that they paid very close attention to minimizing drag and creating a very aerodynamically efficient arrangement on this one. As this airframe is supposed to be capable at low speeds and probably low power settings, that means it might be a pretty good choice for a beginner in the EDF space. Next up, we'll take it out of the box and take a look at all the different features on this model. But before I did, I wanted to make sure you got an idea of how FMS packs their planes because they do a very nice job. When I look inside that packaging, I don't see any of the EPO touching any of the other EPO, and they use that EPS styrofoam to create separation, so that protects your model during shipment. Let's go ahead and get it out of the box and take a closer look. First up is the manual, typical FMS manual. This has got English, German, French, and Chinese in the back, so those are the languages covered by the manual, and it's traditional FMS fare. It's a paper manual, little insert for, looks like the control rod setups and how to set up your ball heads and clevises, and then a little bit on how to assemble the plane. They say the assembly time on this plane is about 10 minutes and it's glueless, so screws only. And I really like that setup because then if you want to take the plane apart and put it in a box, you can do that. But typical FMS manual, just enough information to get the plane up and running, information about the ESC and specifications on the servo, and the spare parts that you can order if you need them. So typical FMS manual, I'd say very good. It's always been sufficient to do the job. In terms of hardware, I mentioned a 10-minute assembly, and that's why. Look at that parts count. It's just a couple control rods and a few screws to screw the wings and the control surfaces on, and that's it. So I believe them when they say 10-minute assembly. You'll probably spend more time working on your radio setup than you will actually putting the plane together. Here's the spar tube, just a quick look at that. Nothing dramatic there, just spar tube, so that'll go right through the center. And next up, we'll take a look at the wings. I do like the paint job, just like the Futura. This has got a really elegant paint scheme on it. I think it's very simple, it's understated, and it looks high-tech, so very cool. And there are the navigation lights out here on the port wingtip. And in terms of the control surfaces, it looks like the flaps are EPO and the ailerons are mechanically hinged. So I like that, that's good. Not a big fan of the EPO on the flaps. I wish they'd put mechanical hinges there as well, but it is what it is. It's got this oleo strut and large tire for rough field operations. So the oleo strut is intended to help on those rougher landings and absorb some of that shock. Servos are covered with servo covers. They use color matching tape, and it's light silver here, dark gray here. So very nicely done. And then on the horns themselves, they use balls. So you get ball link connections. So it'll be a quick Z bend into the servo, a ball link connection on the horn there, and you're gonna be up and running in no time. And then on the wingtip, they use these metal 9-pin D-shell connectors, and I like those a great deal because they really simplify assembly if you want to take the wings off at the field. So if you want to take them off to transport the plane, this makes the job a lot easier because you don't have to worry about polarity and which wire goes into which. I really like seeing this upgrade. 2 thumbs up for me on that. Very nicely done. And then you can see the screw captures right here for the 2 screws that'll hold the wing on. So very simple design, very elegant. There's elegance and simplicity, and I like what I'm seeing there. In terms of the leading edge, we'll just take a look to make sure that's straight, and I don't see any problems. I said for a long time that FMS has just done a really good job with their EPO molding process. They've got it pretty well wired to ground. I never really see any problems there. I'll just line up the aileron, and you can see how it lines up out there on the tip, and then when the flap is in the full up position, you can see a nice alignment there on the trailing edge as well. We'll take a quick look at the starboard wing. I won't go through all the same detail. We'll just take a look for quality. Everything looks good there. I don't see any problems on the top. The control surfaces look like they're in good condition. They move freely. The hinge moves just fine. Everything's covered and taped and screwed down. And we've got our navigation light out here on the tip as well. Next up is the horizontal stabilizer. This has got a little bit of a unique shape to it. It is one piece, which I think is really cool. That's a nice touch. You don't have to assemble it. And 2 servos on the back, so they're not using any kind of torque tube. I like that. And same ball link connections on the elevators themselves, and the elevator hinges are mechanical. So I'd say 2 thumbs up there. 2 connections for your servos. I mean, that's just what you need. So it looks good. Notice the anhedral back there. So there's a little bit of anhedral, not dihedral. Dihedral will be up like that. Anhedral is down like that. That's anhedral on the tail surface, on the horizontal stabilizer. Everything looks like it's in good nick back here. I don't see any damage or concerns, and certainly no problems with the molding or paint. I say the molding process and paint. Everything looks clean, no issues. Finally, we've got the vertical stabilizer. There are 2 screw captures right there in the back, and those are made of plastic. And then for the rudder, we have mechanical hinges again, and the ball link connector and the servo horn. So everything's ready to go. This will assemble very quickly. You connect the rudder servo wire right there, put a couple screws in, and you're done. Very simple assembly. I can see why they say it'll take just 10 minutes. And then finally, we've got the fuselage. We'll just take a look at the outside and inspect it for quality first to make sure everything looks good. Remember the 9-pin connectors right there for the wings? That's where they go. And then the wing inserts go right there, and they screw in from the bottom. So very clean and simple assembly. I like that. You've got a little air intake right here, the integral marking on the back. And then, of course, on the empennage or tail section, there's brass captured screws for the vertical and horizontal stabilizers right here, here, and here. So everything looks good. And of course, your wires for the servos are taped down and ready for the servos to be connected. On the back, I noticed there's no nozzle on the back. I actually have some 3D printed stuff. I might glue something on there. We'll see. I like it to be finished with that little jet exhaust, but we'll see what happens. And then here's the starboard side of the fuselage, and I don't see any issues there either. And then in terms of the canopy, there's a latch back here. You slide that latch back, you lift the canopy up, and that canopy feels like plastic. So it's plastic canopy. That's interesting. And then inside, we've got an EC style connector. I'll be cutting mine off because I use XT style. There's a distribution board for your servos right there, and then all the wires you need to connect your receiver. And then one other thing I'll show you is the battery tray. This has the same style battery tray as the pits, and I know some people have claimed in the past that their battery trays have slid out during flight. So we'll have to pay attention to that. In order to minimize the potential for that happening, I will probably put something in there to keep that device locked in place. But what I can say is it does feel like a pretty affirmative latch. Like, I mean, that's pretty snappy. It feels very tight. But anyway, the battery tray comes out. You mount your battery on there and then slide it in there, and that'll get you the balance you need and tuck your battery way up there in the nose. So I don't see any issues inside the canopy area. Everything looks obvious to me. I don't see any problems here. The only thing, like I said, that I'll have to do is change my connector from an EC to an XT, and I'll be good to go. The last airframe piece is the nose cone, and this is a clip-on affair, so there's a little plastic latch right in there that'll go on the front and clip on. And that's nice because, you know, if you damage the plane, if you nose it in, you can pop these off and buy a replacement without necessarily having to replace the entire fuselage. So it's a breakaway piece, and it's also good for storage. It helps keep it from getting nicked up when you have to put it away. So nose cone, quick snap-on piece. We'll wrap up this first look by taking a look at specifications. The wingspan on this plane is 1,060 millimeters or 41.7 inches for those of you living in the US. Overall length is 1,190 millimeters or 46.8 inches. The flying weight all up is about 2,500 grams. The motor is a 3665 2000 kV spun by a 100 amp ESC. It requires 8 13-gram servos. The radio is a 6-channel, and the reason for that is because you've got flaps and gear on this one, so that makes sense to me. You've got full house controls on this plane: aileron, elevator, throttle, rudder, flaps, and retract, so full control. 3 minutes of flying time, we'll see about that. 4,000 to 5,000 milliamp hour battery at 45C, so we'll see. That's a pretty big range, 1,000 milliamps. Maybe we'll get a little more out of it, and it does look efficient to me, so we'll see. We'll measure that. FMS says the assembly time is about 10 minutes, and the wing loading is 116 grams per dm squared with the wing area of 21.5 dm squared. There are 2 color schemes for this plane at launch. There's a red version like you see here, and they also have a blue version, and there's no gyro in this one. There's no gyro included in the plug-and-play version. One last little note is that they say that the wing and tail of the integral have been pre-embedded with reinforced ribbons for strength. So the idea there obviously is to keep the control surfaces and the wings very rigid during flight. And I can tell you, just putting a little bit of pressure on it, grabbing the wing and trying to bend it, it definitely feels pretty rigid to me. Well, that wraps up my first look at the FMS 80mm integral. I want to say congratulations to FMS for the new product launch, and congratulations for coming up with something that's new and different. It's not the same old thing that we've seen for the last couple years. This is definitely new. It's very modern looking, very sleek design. I can't wait to fly it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I'll remind you, if you like this kind of content, make sure you smash that thumbs up button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you know when new videos hit the channel. That's all I've got for today. Take it easy and go fly something.